Now, the Israeli bombing that killed Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah was purportedly carried out with American-manufactured bunker-buster bombs in Beirut on Friday. Now, these series of bunker-buster bombs that were dropped in a densely populated region flattened as many as about 6 residential building towers, leaving scores of casualties. The use of such weapons in residential areas signals the use of incredible force by the State of Israel that is based on the deadly military doctrine that is followed by the security forces of the State of Israel. So let's take a look at this doctrine.
In a stunning show of force, Israel struck the Hezbollah headquarters in Beirut with bunker-buster bombs, flattening as many as 6 buildings. It left behind scores of casualties, signaling an incredible assault that stems from a deadly military principle followed by Israel, known as the Dahiya Doctrine. The doctrine is named after the Dahiya suburb of Beirut, where the Lebanese paramilitary group, the Hezbollah, has its headquarters. The Israeli military first struck this neighborhood during its assault on Lebanon in the summer of 2006 that killed nearly 1,000 civilians. More than 300 victims were children. The strike severely damaged Lebanon's civilian infrastructure, including power plants, sewage treatment plants, bridges, and port facilities. The Dahiya Doctrine was formulated by the then General Gadi Eisenkot when he was the chief of the Northern Command. Calling it a battle plan, Eisenkot said, Israel will apply disproportionate force on Dahiya village and cause great damage and destruction there. He added that for Israel, these are not civilian villages, but military bases. International law, however, expressly prohibits use of disproportionate force and the targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure. The International Committee of the Red Cross calls them war crimes. It has stated that applying the principle of proportionality is critically important for protecting civilians and critical infrastructure in situations of armed conflict. Article 51 of the 4th Geneva Convention prohibits attacks that may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects. In addition to Lebanon, Israel's military has applied the Dahiya Doctrine repeatedly in its assaults on Palestinians in Gaza. Most notably, in October 2023, after the Hamas's attack killed nearly 1,200 people, including about 800 civilians. Israel launched one of the deadliest bombing campaigns in history and a ground invasion of Gaza. As of July 31st of 2024, Gaza officials say the Israeli military has killed over 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza, mostly civilians, including some 15,000 children. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment in this war, especially in Lebanon, we're being joined by retired Colonel Rich Outzen, who's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and the Jamestown Foundation. He's joining us live on this broadcast. Now, Colonel Outzen, let me in fact start off by asking you this. The fact that Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, has now been assassinated by the State of Israel, how badly do you think this has now debilitated Hezbollah's capabilities to hit back at Israel?
Well, not to quibble over terms, and it's good to be with you. Not to quibble over terms, but I'm not sure it qualifies as an assassination. If you consider him the leader of a militant movement that's engaged in war against Israel, I'm certain the Israelis would not.
We can of course debate that. This is what the Lebanese faction is of course claiming. Hezbollah is not just a militant organization, but is also actively involved in the politics of Lebanon. This something is a different debate. But the question that I want you to, in fact, weigh in on is how much do you think this has impacted Hezbollah's military capability?
Well, Nasrallah himself was more of a political and to some extent a spiritual or symbolic leader. I'm sure he had some sort of an ultimate approval or perhaps in some cases a veto, but he's not the guy who runs the day-to-day military operations. That's someone different, and it changes a lot because the Israelis tend to take out those top men pretty frequently. I think that what we saw a week and a half ago with the exploding pagers and walkie-talkies was a far more significant military blow because it basically took out 4,000 or 5,000 of the most senior and most capable military commanders on the field, and some from the political realm as well. This, though, has a major symbolic value because this is the head of the movement. This is the unifying figure for Hamas, for Hezbollah, both in the political and in the military sense. And he's the key link to the Iranians, to Assad. So this is going to be the organization is already reeling from its field losses, although it still has the capability to fire missiles and rockets. It still has Iranian advisors on the ground. So I'd say it's a heavy blow, but not a debilitating blow in the military sense. But in the symbolic and political sense, and in the hold that Hezbollah has over the Lebanese polity, it is a significant blow, the most serious ever struck against it.
Right. Now, in the course of the last 7+ days, ever since Israel has actively started targeting Lebanon's Hezbollah, how much do you think Lebanon's Hezbollah is in fact held back? Because it's widely estimated that Hezbollah may have had an arsenal of nearly about 120,000 rockets. They've not hit back hard at Israel. Is there any reason as to why they've not done it? Were they just boasting about the capabilities that they have? How much do you think the Hezbollah arsenal has been reduced by the Israeli strikes?
Well, it's hard without access to classified data, which I don't have to know the specific numbers. But I would say if the estimates were, in the high 100,000 range before the war, they've been using 10, 15 a day at least in terms of rocket attacks on northern Israel, and in some cases trying to hit Tel Aviv and things like that. I still think they have probably close to 100,000 rockets and missiles left. And the reason they would hold on to that is because they are expecting a ground operation at some point, something that will remove their infrastructure, their tunnels, their fighting positions, their what they call nature preserves, where they've got rockets underground and hidden them. All of that is thoroughly developed military infrastructure south of the Litani River. So I think they're holding on to a good portion of those rockets and missiles as a deterrent in case Israel does launch that ground operation to inflict a higher level of pain. They have to maintain some ability to escalate.
It's easy for Israel to fight an air operation because the Hezbollah do not have air defense systems. But let's look back what happened in 2006 when the Israeli army, in fact, tried to invade into Lebanon. In southern Lebanon, where the terrain is very hilly, they got bogged down and could not make much of a progress. With that being the case, do you think this time around the Israelis would be willing to invade with their army into southern Lebanon?
Well, I think they've learned a lot from what happened in 2006. I think the type of operations they would do would be different. I was there in 2006 and with massive multi-division operations trying to conduct sort of broad sweeps, and it ended up having these very hard points and dug under fighters under the ground and coming up and attacking from tunnels. I think they'd do it differently. They'd probably have a lighter footprint, more use of helicopters, a raid, go in and an intelligence-based raid to destroy a certain position and then get out before you have to get into an extended firefight, sort of like what they did at the Mysoft facility in Syria when they went in and struck the Iranian rocket-making and missile-making facility there. They were in and out within a matter of hours. I think those sorts of ground operations are more likely than a broad multi-division front that we saw last time, at least in the initial stage.
And also, do you think at this moment, has Israel done enough in terms of its military operations in Lebanon? Do you think Israel will continue full steam ahead as it has been doing the last 1 week? Or do you think that there could be some kind of restraint that Israel may now choose to exercise, considering that they've taken out Hezbollah's chief and they may now perhaps negotiate? Is that a possibility at all?
I think so. I think there's two possibilities. The first is that they pause somewhat, lessen the tempo of attacks a little to see the response from Iran, which now has a real dilemma because they've lost the leader of their proxy in Lebanon, and the Hezbollah movement may not have the stomach for much more fight. So if Hezbollah steps back now, having absorbed this massive series of blows, then I think Israel may, because what Israel says it really wants is quiet in the north. It wants its citizens to be able to return back. So if that happens, if Hezbollah essentially backs off, stops firing missiles, and makes it known that they understand they lost this round,
Right.
then I think you'll see a de-escalation. But on the other hand, if they up the pressure and feel the need to retaliate strongly, then the Israelis may go with what a number of their generals and colonels have been saying in public, retired and active, that now is the time to go in and remove Hezbollah physically from south of the Litani. And in that case, there'll be no let-up. There'll be further escalation and ground-ups.
You know, Colonel Abdon, you are a military guy, but I want to ask you this question. Is Israel looking for a military solution in a conflict which is essentially political in nature? Because in 1982, when Hezbollah was founded, Israel was in Lebanon. 4 decades ago, Hezbollah did not even exist. So even if they were to try to take out Hezbollah, they would not actually be able to crush the resistance in that region. What's your take on that?
Well, as a military man, I've heard people make the argument that you can't solve insurgencies or political dilemmas and conflicts through military means. And that's partially true. But you also have no chance of solving them if the other side has military means and you use none. So the use of military force is a necessary but not sufficient component of a solution to these political conflicts. In the end, there has to be some resolution politically between the state of Lebanon and the state of Israel. And destroying Hezbollah, or at least massively inflicting damage on its military capabilities, will postpone, probably, but will not achieve a political settlement. So it's a temporary relief from military attacks into Israel, but by no means does it solve the casus belli that exists for both sides.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Colonel Abdon, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Yeah, good to talk with you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.